The trouble in Salem began during the cold, dark Massachusetts winter of January 1692. 8 young girls gathered night after night to hear stories from a Caribbean slave woman, Tituba. Then suddenly the girls take ill, but their illness was very strange. The girls suffered from delirium, violent convulsions, incomprehensible speech, trance-like states, and odd skin sensations. The worried villagers searched desperately for an explanation. Their conclusion: the girls were under a spell, bewitched, and worse yet, by the members of their own pious community. Each group has been given a particular person that is involved in the Salem witch trials. You are to listen carefully to their story and predict what happened to them. 12-year-old Ann Putnam was in many ways the leader of the Circle Girls and accused many people in the upcoming months, people who were good citizens of Salem, but most of whom were enemies of the influential Putnam family. Ann's most shocking accusation was against Rebecca Nurse. Ann had accused over 60 people of witchcraft. In Puritan Salem Village, a place where anyone different was not trusted, Tituba was probably the most different among them. Not only was she a slave, which was unusual in the area, she was also a dark-skinned foreigner, setting her apart from the white Puritan villagers. Tituba was a slave to the Paris family. She tended to their 3 children. In the evenings, Tituba entertained the daughters with fortune-telling games and stories of magic and spirits of the Caribbean, all of which were forbidden by Puritan code. When the girls became bewitched, they were pressed to identify their tormentors. The girls pointed out 3 social outcasts, including Tituba. Tituba denied practicing any witchcraft, but Reverend Paris beat his slave and demanded that she confess to the magistrates, promising her freedom if she cooperated. Sarah Good was one of the first to be accused of witchcraft by the circle of young girls in Salem. She was a likely witch in the eyes of many townspeople, an odd, homeless woman who did not fit the Puritan mold. The people of Salem were very familiar with Sarah Good. She often begged door to door with her children. If she was refused, she would walk away mumbling. Many claimed these curses were responsible for failed crops and death of livestock. On March 1st, 1692, Sarah Good faced examination. During the questioning, Ann Putnam and the other Salem girls broke into fits. Sarah Good pleaded, "I am falsely accused," but then Tituba named her as a witch. Several villagers, including her own husband, also testified against her, and Sarah was put in prison. Rebecca Nurse was a frail 70-year-old woman who had been involved with land disputes with the Putnam family. As the Salem witch trials went on, a warrant was made out for Nurse's arrest, and a public outcry ensued over the accusations made against her. She was a prominent member of the community, and petitions were signed on Nurse's behalf. Because of her respectability, many testified on her behalf, but Ann Putnam and her siblings broke out into fits and convulsions. But the other Salem girls were hesitant to accuse Nurse. Mary Easty, a wife and mother of 7, was a well-respected woman in Salem. She was a kind, religious woman whose dignified demeanor fit the strict Puritan mold. But even she was not safe from the hysteria. In April of 1692, she was accused of witchcraft. The accusation shocked the village. Unlike some of the other alleged witches, she was not a social outcast or an outspoken woman who may have offended the villagers. Perhaps the accusation was inspired by envy. The Easties owned a valuable farm in Salem. Or maybe Mary was a likely target after the conviction of her sister, Rebecca Nurse. Wealthy farmer John Proctor sternly denounced the proceedings and warned against listening to the young girls. After the examination of Rebecca Nurse, Proctor was enraged and verbally expressed his disapproval of the trials. His comments were eventually used against him. Some townspeople believed that someone with so little concern with the afflicted girls must be guilty himself. But Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, was accused first. As John defended her innocence at the trials, the girls suddenly pointed fingers at him, the first man to be named a wizard. The only evidence against them were spectral. The afflicted girls claimed that Proctor's apparitions were tormenting them. Their hysterics proved enough in court, and both John and Elizabeth were imprisoned. Proctor wrote an impassioned letter to the Boston clergy claiming we are all innocent persons. He described the unfairness of the court proceedings and how torture was used to extract confessions. Giles Corey, along with his wife Martha, were prosperous farmers and full members of the church. Ann Putnam and the other girls accused Giles Corey of wizardry, claiming that Corey's apparition assaulted them. Naming Corey as a wizard is a matter of speculation. The Coreys were closely associated with the Porter faction of the church, which opposed the Putnam faction. Giles was also 80 years old and a hard, stubborn man who expressed criticism of the witchcraft proceedings. With the background knowledge you have just been given, predict the fate of these people of Salem.